Hi, it's Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Coming up, a blog post we want to share with you and, of course, review the latest in social media and technology. We're doing another phone comparison review. This is between the Verizon HTC Droid Incredible 4G LTE against the HTC One V, which is Virgin Mobile. You can find both devices on Verizon. You can find it at verizonwireless.com. That's verizonwireless.com. And for the Virgin Mobile device, you can go to virginmobileusa.com. That's virginmobileusa.com. Be sure to tell them Chris Voss sent you. Be sure to tune into the Chris Voss Show's email list and also our YouTube channel subscriptions so that you can get all the latest details. We have all the phone companies sending us phones now, at least the major ones, and you definitely want to see the latest and coolest phones that we'll be reviewing as they send them to us. One thing we'll be doing here is, let's see, the Verizon Droid. Let's take a look at the dimensions and specs here. It has a height of 4.82 inches at 2.4 width at 0.46 thickness. Has a weight of 4.66 ounces. The talk time is 9 hours maximum. Standby is 447 hours max, and 1700 milliamp battery. The display is an LCD color TFT resolution 549/60, 4-inch diagonal Super LCD. OS platform is Android version 4.03 plus HTC Sense, and the processor is a 1.2 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon processor dual core. 8 GB internal storage, raw hardware, 4.8 internal storage available to user, 1 GB of RAM. On the camera, what we're looking at is it has an 8 megapixel camera on the back with 1080p, of course, and a front-facing resolution VGA. I believe it's 0.3 front-facing camera on this device. No, I'm completely wrong. It's just a VGA front-facing camera. So let's take a look here. And then the memory card, it does have an expandable memory card of up to 32 gigabytes that you can take and put into the back of the device. We'll show you that here in a second. And that pretty much covers it. Let's get into the HTC One V. On the One V, you're looking at a 4.74 inch height phone, 2.35 inches in width, and 0.36 thickness at 4.06 ounces. The talk time is 7.2 hours max, standby 252 hours max, and it's got a 1500 milliamp lithium battery in it. Comes with an LCD display, color TFT. The resolution is 480 by 800 pixels at 3.7 diagonal screen, Sony Super LCD. Comes with Android version 4.0, HTC Sense, a 1 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S2, processor. Memory is 4 GB internal storage, raw hardware, 910 megabytes internal storage available to user, 512 RAM. On the camera on the back of the device, we are, and I should mention actually, this does have also expandable memory with a micro SD card that you can take and put into it. You can expand up to 32 gigabytes with that. And on the camera, you're looking at a rear camera of a 5 megapixel at 720 HD resolution. It does not have a front-facing camera. One difference to take a look at both these phones is the Droid Incredible runs on a 3 or 4G network, where the HTC will only run on a 3G. So some real big differences between the two devices in comparing them there. Alright, so let's take a look at each device. We'll take a look at the backs as we flip these over. Now, the backs of both devices, you can see here that we have the flash lamp, we have the camera eye, we have a small speaker here. Not really excited about the small speaker on the HTC. It could be much more prevalent where it doesn't get muffled as much. But it seems to do a pretty good job. It doesn't get muffled too badly, but it could be better. It has some angles around the top here where it takes and gives you some ergonomic control. It has a nice rubber back. Both devices have Beats audio on them. I really like the Beats audio feature. If you're used to having an enhanced sound system, like with an equalizer, it makes a great sound as soon as you plug in your earphone. If you also have the Beats audio devices, such as the headphones and audio, you can take, and earphones, you can take and utilize those those, and it enhances the sound and makes them great for those devices. On the HTC One V, you're looking at the camera lens here. You've got the flash lamp there at the top. You've got a curved back here at the bottom, which makes it very convenient for the speaker so it doesn't get muffled, and is very convenient. Both devices are pretty thin and handy and feel pretty strong in their build and makeup. On the HTC Droid, you've got the ability to put, of course, your SIM card here in the side, or I'm sorry, your SIM card's here, your micro SD card would go here. So you've got the expandable memory that you can take and do there to get the memory expanded. On the HTC One V, you've got a place to put your expandable micro SD card right there. So that's how both devices deal with the expandable memory that you can do on both of them. Okay, so along the bottom of each device, you can see there's a small microphone hole here, and along the HTC One, there's a small microphone here at the bottom. It has a curved angled bottom that I actually really enjoy because you can kind of hold it very easily with one hand, and the device is so light. It works out really good. You've got the power button here with the cool red color. You've got your earphone jack here. You've got a power button here, indicator light on the HTC One, and then the earphone jack. Okay, so down the right side of each of these devices, there's a rocker button up and down. There's also one here, both for the volume. You can take and it's hard to see because they're black and they fade in pretty good, which is probably better when it comes to not having something that's too obtrusive on the device for the volume rocker button. You can see here the micro USB plugs, ports for both devices for charging and syncing. Okay, so now after looking at both devices outside, let's take a look at the software that's in both of them. Now, we have in each of the devices the latest software that is available to them at this point in time, and I believe, well, we'll have to check. I have like about 20 of these phones laying around the office, so I never know what's in them half the time or what's been updated or where we're going. So it's a fun job doing this, let's put it that way. So we have 4.03 software with 4.0 HTC Sense on the Droid, and on the One V we have 4.03 Android version and the HTC Sense 4.0. So we have the latest available updates on both these devices, so you have a good idea of what we're working with here. Both have I believe a finite swipe, if I recall correctly. Yes, they do. They have a finite swipe between going back through the menus. Of course, you have everything that you normally would with most Android systems, where you can have a widget system to do stuff. The Droid is a little fun. It makes the Droid sound when it first starts up, and the way it comes from the factory, where every time you get a notification it goes Droid, which is kind of fun. After a while it gets a little old, but it's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun. What can I say? You've got your notifications menu here, very similar, especially since they're running on pretty much the same HTC Sense software UI. So that's pretty much that there. Both are great devices. The Droid is very solid. It's got some weight to it, and it feels like a good quality phone. HTC is the same way. Even though it's very thin, very light, it's very easy to hold. I actually like holding it like this. There's kind of a ridge and a bump there, and you can actually kind of hold it like this and flop it around, and it feels like a nice, wonderful little phone. Very well built, solid as far as we can tell. We didn't throw it against the wall, but it seems to do the trick. Across the top, you can see here we've got the speaker for making calls. We've got the rear, or the front-facing camera, I'm sorry, and we've got a backspace button, home button, and a recent apps button. Across the HTC One V, we have the speaker area. There is no front-facing camera. We have the back button, home button, and recent apps button. Let's get into some of the details of both these devices. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the speed tests that we did on these, and of course what we're going to be doing is pulling up speed tests that we did from a prior date. We're going to be looking at the log. So if you do notice that the Wi-Fi is active on both devices, this is the log that we're looking at. Now these are the speeds that we got from Verizon. Of course, we're picking up 4G speeds, LTE speeds with the Verizon. With the Virgin Mobile, it runs on the Sprint network. You can see the results of what we're getting for 3G network. Some people like It really is dependent on what you want to take and do. With Virgin Mobile, you pay for most of the phones up front, you have a very low monthly fee, and you only pay month to month with no contract. With Verizon, you usually buy the phone, you get it very inexpensively, you end up with a 2-year contract, and you pay a pretty fair amount for your monthly phone bill. Some people like it one way, some people like it the other way, but both phones we found are great phones depending upon whichever economical choice is your preference. Let's take a look at some other tests that we'll take and do. We'll look at the Antutu test here. And on the Antutu test, this is going to give us a rundown of the detailed scores of what we did prior on a benchmarking test on both devices. And let's see if we can't get that to activate. You're going to see the breakdowns here on the integer and CPU. Looks like that's not, it's going to give us a hard time. There we go. And you can see the breakdowns here. The score was 6019 on the Verizon Droid, on the HTC One 3060. The great thing about these benchmarking scores, and we're using the Antutu benchmark here, is you can download these apps on your Android device, follow along at home, and see how your device also holds up. Okay, so here we're using the Geekbench 2. A 1284 score came out on the Droid, and 459 came out on the HTC One. I had somebody mention to me the other day, they're like, why do you pick on these phones that are less? And that's not really what we're trying to do with these benchmarks. What we're trying to do is if you have one of these phones at home, you can see how they compare, especially if you're considering upgrading for, say, the HTC One to maybe the Droid or something else. You can see how your phone compares. So certainly not picking on anybody for that matter, but giving you a good performance reviews on both of them and benchmarking stats that you can be the judge of. Okay, so here you can see we're using the benchmarking test and eBench, and this basically tests the Java threads and the native threads of the device, how it processes. This gives us some idea of the speed and technical bearing of the devices. You can see here that the Droid scored 4768 against 1460 of the HTC One, and 158 against Java 58 on the One. Okay, so here we're using the Antutu 3D rating benchmark. You can see the score on the Droid was 3,655. The score on the HTC One V was 2159. Okay, so here we're using the billion counter to see how many seconds it takes to process the device through counting to a billion. So you can see here the Droid did it in 24.275 seconds and 58.301 seconds. Okay, and so on the Geo benchmark tests on both these devices, the Droid did 6,547 frames at 58 frames per second. On the Geo benchmark on the HTC One, it did 3541 at 31 frames per second. Okay, so here we can see we've pulled the GPS status test on both devices. We're seeing how accurately and how many satellites each device can take and pick up, and how well it can find where it's at on the planet. You can see there's 22 different satellites the Verizon Droid has picked up. There's 16 in use, getting within an accuracy of 10 feet. You can also see the HTC One is performing very well. It's only picking up about 13 in view and 10 that it's using, and it's bouncing between 10 feet and 13 feet, so not too bad. Okay, so KFS benchmark here we're taking and doing. You can see the overall benchmarks of the devices. The One V came in at frames per second overall of 19.763. The Droid came in at frames per second of 41.815. Okay, so here we have on both devices, we ran a pass mark performance test, and you can see here the system on the Droid scored 1860 and the HTC One scored 1061. The CPU tests on the devices came in at 4554 on the Verizon and 1279 on the One. The disk test came in at 2583. The disk test on the One came in at 1513. The memory test came in at 2304 and 1388 on the Passmark. The 2D graphic test came in at 1889 and 1438 on the 2D graphics test on the One, and 607 on 3D graphics test against 471. Okay, so here you can see on both devices with the Droid came out with a score of 4,098, and you can see how it placed among some of its competitors. These also always aren't the accurate graphs we find. Sometimes they seem to change with the OSs, and you never know what OS these devices are running on. The device for the HTC One came in at 2,085, and so you can see the comparative analysis graphically wise there. Okay, so now here on both devices, this is the Velimo test, benchmarking test. You can see here the HTML5 did 1480 against 807 on the HTC One, 524 on the Verizon against 294 on the HTC One. Okay, so here are the SunSpider scores we pulled on both these. These test the browser and how well it can serve up JavaScript, etc., etc. The score on the Verizon Droid was 1965, and the score on the HTC One was 3366. We tried to bring you some browser mark scores, but since the launch of the iPhone, the site's been very flaky and hasn't been able to work half the time, or most of the time, actually, I should say. So there's your browser mark, or I'm sorry, your SunSpider scores.
Okay, now, so this has your pretty much your standard Android operating system, especially the 4.03 or HTC software. If you've taken and seen it, you have the ability to control, of course, up here your flash and all that good stuff. The indicator light's not coming on because they have the battery low. You have your settings button that you can take and hit. You have access to your camera, front, back, self-timer, image resolution changes you want to make, video quality, of course, you can adjust up and down. The review duration of image adjustments that you want to take and make to the quality of the image. You can adjust exposure and all that good stuff. Let's take a look at a few others. Let's see, ISO, white balance. The real nice thing about the Android line, of course, you have a whole lot more customization of the camera than you do with other OSs. Camera options here, you can see autofocus, face detection, smile, capture, camera, all that sort of good stuff. Let's take a look at, you've got auto upload if you want to take and do this, camera interface where you've got grid, shutter, different video options you may have for video stabilization, different camera options. I think we covered that. So you have all that available to you there. There's different basically camera scenes that you can take and pre-program into the phone so that you can get different lighting scenarios and stuff like that. You can choose HDR, panorama, portrait, group portrait, whiteboard, low light, close-up, etc., etc. And the camera will adjust itself to what it needs to do. You've got a zoom here, in and out, and then you also have the feature of where you have the ability to add different effects. Now, the great thing about these effects is they'll show up real time in the camera so that you can get an idea as to how the effects will look when you do your shot. So, and of course, you can change these to however you want to take and do that. You can, of course, focus by touching anywhere on the screen so that you can get the subject you want to focus. You also have a shutter button for your camera and then a video button which activates your video. Let's take a look at some of the camera shots that we did. Okay, so now let's take a look at the camera shots that we got out of the HTC camera. It seems to be compliant with a lot of the different rear cameras that we see in the HTC product line, especially the HTC One product line. You can see here it takes great sharp photos, great detail, all that good stuff. One thing we have noticed, like I mentioned with the HTC cameras, is the ones of late have kind of jacked up the yellow, blues, and greens in the photos. You can see a picture here, and we use this as a way to show you what happens in certain environments. You can see here, and this is much more defined on the actual camera itself, it's coming through very differently, but the greens come through very thick on here, and of course the floor looks very yellow when this is actually more of a brown color. Now we find that with most of the HTC One phones they do that, and the reason that we presume that they do that is because it makes your photos you take in other environments much more brighter. The images pop with yellow, blues, greens popping out. The challenge is when you get into an environment like this where it's dominated by yellows, blues, and greens, it tends to overrun the camera. So this is one of the reasons that we use this as a test. You can see it's got great detail on the floor. It takes great pictures. You can adjust some of these settings out by going into the customization and everything else. Is it bad? We don't think so. but definitely you want to be aware of it when you go into a yellow, blue, and green environment. Here, once again, the video, and this is another thing that kind of surprised me on the video. The aperture area that it takes video, it wasn't as wide as some of the other areas that we've seen with other cameras. But it still takes great video, and there's no problem there. You can still see great detail in the shot. Here's a low light shot. It performed really well with the low light shot and flash shots. Very impressive. This will take a second to kick into gear with the lamp. But you can see here it does a great darken low light shot. You can see the image very well. It doesn't have any problem getting it light up and being able to see detail. Same thing with the flash. It takes a great flash photo. You can see here very well in detail. Now this is a flash in low light, I should say, where we're taking it, and this is almost a darkened image here. You can see great detail on the bike, everything else. This is a great shot for a low light shot. Colors come in really rich, so it performs really well in low light, which was very impressive, and it performs in normal light just as well. So we really like the camera, very impressive. HTC is building a good one. Okay, so let's take a look at the camera that's found on the HTC One V. Now, it has a camera that's similar to many Android phones. A lot of people like these phones because they're very customizable in the camera, where you have a lot more limits with the iPhone products or the iOS products. You have your flash ability to adjust flash up here. You also have, of course, you can see there, you have the ability to control your zoom in and out. You have settings where you can go into this, and you can, of course, create different settings: self-timer, image resolution, video quality, review duration, image adjustments, white balance, ISO. Continuous shooting is very nice. You can shoot very quickly and then choose photographs you want to take and keep. Image interface, reset to default video options, all this sort of good stuff. You have the ability to customize. It also has different scene views that you can take and do. Camera scenes, HDR, panorama, portrait. These tend to change from Android device to Android device, but you can see the ones that are on this particular one. One thing that's really cool is they have, if you hit this opaque button up here, you can have different editors that will edit your photos and create their values through the screen as you shoot them. So some people like that. It's kind of a pre-edit or pre-production edit, if you will, to give you an idea of some different things you can do. You have a shutter speed button here. You have your video button here. It takes really good pictures given the size and quality of the phone. Not really given the quality, but it takes really good pictures. Let's put it that way. You can see here a funny picture of my dog. Here you can see a picture of the floor, and this is a picture of our kitchen floor. It takes very accurate photos when it comes to the color. Usually we're looking for high yellows out of this, or high greens. We get good colors with the photo ability on the camera. It takes really clear photos. Here's a low light photo where we're taking this with a flash, and so on this flash photo you can see here that we've got really good pictures, colors that we've come up with. Good pictures within the screen, so that you can take and do that. Now, on video-wise, it takes good video, and you can see that here as it plays. The yellow's a little high, and so are the greens and blues, which is pretty much what HTC has done to kind of bounce the pictures up a little bit more. That's why we use this to do that. But you can fix some of that in the settings on the you can fix that in the settings on the device. Let's take a look here at this is a low light situation, of course, that we're taking in using the lamp on the back, and it comes in pretty good. It's not the greatest lamp in the back, but it's just a very small phone that's economical and it achieves what it can.
Okay, so both devices are wonderful devices, built very solid in our experience with them. We've enjoyed playing with both of them. They actually have features within each of themselves that is very strong, and different favorite ways that we enjoy using the phone. With the Verizon Droid, you can go to VerizonWireless.com. That's VerizonWireless.com. Be sure to check out all the wonderful phones they have there, and thanks to Verizon for providing the phone for us for review, you can go to Virgin Mobile USA at Virgin Mobile USA. Be sure to check out all the phones they have there, and the ones we reviewed, of course, on the ChrisVossShow.com. Thanks to Virgin Mobile for providing the phones with us. Chris Voss tested, Chris Voss approved. Be sure to tell him Chris Voss sent you. And be sure to subscribe to our email list and also our YouTube channel, Chris Voss, so you can see all the latest and greatest phones. We have all the major phone companies sending us phones now, and you want to see the latest and greatest, coolest stuff, and also see the comparison reviews we'll be doing. Thanks for coming by. Be sure to check into our website multiple times a day for updates. Bye-bye.